Namaste and good morning, everyone. We'll start with the prayers. Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. ओम शांति शांति शांति. Now Mahamrityunjay mantra 3 times. ओम त्र्यंबकं यजामहे सुगंधिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकम् इव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्. ॐ त्र्यंबकं यजामहे सुगंधिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकम् इव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्. ॐ त्र्यंबकं यजामहे सुगंधिं पुष्टिवर्धनम् उर्वारुकम् इव बन्धनान् मृत्योर्मुक्षीयमामृतात्. ओम शांति शांति शांति. Welcome everyone. Today, instead of doing the Rama forms, we'll do the Rama prayers which we learned last time. So I'll say one line at a time and you repeat after me, and then we will do the whole prayer together. Ramo Rajamanihi Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bhihata Nishachara Chamoho Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. Ramanasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasosmyaham Rame Chittalayah Sada Bhavatu Me. Bho Rama Mamuddhara. Now all together. Ramo Rajamanihi Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bhihata Nishachara Chamo Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. Ramanasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasosmyaham Rame Chittalayah Sada Bhavatu Me. Bho Rama Mamuddhara. Welcome everyone to this special question and answer class we are having today. So no homework for today in today's class. Many people said please don't give us the homework in today's class. So no homework. We'll just go through the questions which you have raised. I have collected the questions from your emails as well as from the earlier chats, and some I have responded individually and some I have which I thought would be good for the whole class to know, that I have composed in a Q&A section. If you know, in our body, the brain has two parts. Most of you probably know. The neurologists have found out that it's a left brain and right brain. So even though the body is whole, the brain is as a whole, it has two distinct halves, left half and right half. Left half controls the right side of the body and right half controls the left side of the body generally. Also, there are certain functions which left and right halves cover. So left half for more for analysis, logic, reasoning, mathematical skills. Right half more for arts and related subjects, soft skills, so to speak. Language, when you talk of a language, it's generally the right half of the brain which is dominant, which is basically what processes the language. So most of the time when you learn and use a language, it's the right half of the brain which is more activated. In case of Sanskrit, however, there have been some studies, because Sanskrit is a language, so right half is naturally quite active, but it's also so logical, just like as we have been discussing, the grammar is very logical, very scientific, very structured, like you would be studying a science subject, which is the part of the left program. And because of that, it actually, they find out that when one learns Sanskrit or practices Sanskrit, both halves of the brain are meaningfully activated. So this is probably the only language, maybe there may be some other, which has this quality that both halves of the brain are engaged in a very balanced manner. So learning Sanskrit actually from a neurological perspective is a very balanced approach. Secondly, in Sanskrit, traditionally the way they were studying, so children were going to these are called gurukulams. So they would go and stay there. From the age of, it could be 7, 8, up to 11, depending upon the different places and different social customs. Some as early as 5, 6 also. And at that age, their intellectual capabilities are not very well developed. So to study Sanskrit grammar, and remember, there were no easy books at that time. They would just start in Sanskrit, teaching in Sanskrit, which people would learn as sort of a little bit at home. But also, they would not have any easy, like we are kind of trying to conduct here classes in any easy way. So Panini Ashtadhyay, which I told you about, 4,000 sutras, they would teach with that. And the way they would start, so teacher recites the sutras and a student, a young fellow, listens and repeats after him. And day in and day out, this process will go on. A student at that age doesn't understand the meaning, and that's okay. The exercise primarily consists of teacher recites, and there is no books also. So a student just listens and chants after the teacher. And they used to, because the memory is very good at the childhood level, and they used to memorize texts after texts very easily, very naturally, effortlessly. And when they grow a little older, they start learning the meaning. And then, as I told you, it's more like a computer program, the Panini grammar. So once they know all the sutras, they memorize, and in sequence, for them to apply, it's just like as if you are using a computer program. They could very quickly, without the help of any book, without the help of any tables. Like we have all these tables, they were not really using any tables actually. They just had these sutras in memory. And once they understood the working of the sutras, it immediately would be ready. And earlier there was a dictionary, ancient times. It was more like a thesaurus. It was called Amarakosha. It had 10,000 words, roughly. And they would memorize that dictionary, that thesaurus. It had synonyms of multiple things. So there was no, it was not used as a reference book. The dictionary was not in a list form. It was actually in a poem. So even the whole dictionary was put in a poem. And they would just memorize this thing. And it wasn't so difficult. Many people could memorize. And what they found recently in some neurological studies, that nowadays many people do not memorize. Even if they study Sanskrit, they get very familiar with these books to the extent that they can know anything where it is, but they don't have that traditional way of memorizing. It is like something I compare with the keyboard. I start using keyboard, I don't remember the keys. First I have to look, and then slowly I get more familiar. I kind of know all the positions of the keys, but then there is a difference between the one who has traditionally learned how to type without looking at keyboard and how to place their fingers. Even though, for example, I can type without searching for the keys, like it automatically comes, but it's not the same thing as somebody who has learned typing in a way how to place the fingers and without looking at keyboard. So the similar kind of difference. So people who learn Sanskrit now, they actually are like very familiar with what the text has, the sutras, but don't have that same kind of memory. And they found in some neurological studies that people who used to learn traditionally in the rote learning and memorizing function, they develop some beneficial neurological pathways in their brain, which is not the case with one who had just somehow learned it. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective from language Sanskrit, which is considered very special. And now some neurological studies actually are confirming that aspects of learning. And this effect of Sanskrit chants, if done correctly on the brain and on the peacefulness of a person, that has been known for a long time. That somehow they create some vibrations. I do not know how many scientific studies are done in that regard, but just people's experience, that even if people do not understand a word, just listening to this mantras or chantings, it's a very uplifting experience. So with this a little bit of trivia about Sanskrit, I want to start with our class. So we will not cover any new topics today. It is primarily for just questions and answers. So there were a few questions on relative clause, including the word order. So I thought, let me explain the relative clause. So relative clause, as you understand, like in Sanskrit or even in English, it always goes with an independent clause. Independent clause means the sentence can stay by its own. In relative clause, the sentence cannot stay by its own. So, for example, a sentence, Sa pashyati, he sees. That's an independent clause. The yaha pashyati, one who sees, that's not an independent clause, because you will not put an independent sentence like this. Yaha pashyati, one who sees, means what? It sentence looks very incomplete. So this is called relative clause, and this is called independent clause. Relative clause in English can generally comes before one who sees, he sees. In Sanskrit, because of the word structure, it can come before or after the independent clause. Independent clause is made of these called relative pronouns, yaha. So in English we say like who, one who, for example, and he. So one who sees, he sees. But in Sanskrit there are different pronouns for relative clause. And we had this discussion where I told you that this is the normal clause, so to speak, for the table for tad, saha, tau, te, and then very correspondingly yaha, yau, ye, and that correspondence goes all the way in all the genders. So you use the relative pronouns and then the independent clause pronouns, which is from this table. So relative clause pronoun comes from this table and independent clause pronouns come from this table. There is also an interrogative clause, like who is there, as a question. We did not cover in that detail, but I wanted to give an idea that even these interrogative, they just change the first letter. Kaha, kau, ke, yaha, yau, ye. Very, very similar and in all the three genders. So when we use a relative clause with independent clause, the rule is that the gender and the number of both independent clause and relative clause pronouns would be the same. So gender and number, that means if it is dual here, yau, it should be dual here. If it is masculine here, it will be masculine here. But the case does not have to match. So I can say one who is the king. Yaha, so I would use yaha. Yaha raja asti. To him I gave a book. Tasmai pustakam dadami. To him I gave a book. So the case does not have to match, but the gender and the number, singular, dual, or plural, that has to match. So this part is you have to remember. So we'll see a few examples. So in Gita, verse 5.5, yaha pashyati sa pashyati. Very simple. One who sees, he sees. And then the whole verse talks about what one sees. So he alone sees, he alone who sees truly. That's what here it says in the translation. He alone who sees truly. Then here another one. And there you can see the case is different. Mahajano yena gataha sapanthaha. By which the great person has traveled, that is the path. So yena is the third case singular. Yena is the third case singular and saha is the first case singular, nominative singular. So this is instrumental singular, nominative singular. And that's what we are using here. Nominative singular and instrumental singular and nominative singular. So the cases can be different. So by yena means by which. So by which path the great person has traveled, that is the path. Then there is another way to make the relative clause sentences, and that is by some indeclinable words. So this is related to the relative and independent relative pronouns. But then there are some words which are indeclinable and they do not have any case, so they are always used as such. So one such word is yatra, tatra. Yatra means where, tatra means there. So these words kind of make a pair. So where there is smoke, there is a possibility of fire. Like in English we say. Similarly in Sanskrit, where yatra, yatra, tatra. Then another combination, such combination is yada, tada, when and then. So when you see the clouds in the sky, then you understand there is a possibility of rain. So like that. So when and then, where and there. And Egenes' book has given these clauses, 4 or 5 clauses actually, 4 or 5 such words which are used in relative and independent clauses. So this one example I want to put here, yatra and tatra, where and there. So here the verse is, it's a very beautiful verse, and yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha yatraitastu na pujyante sarvastatra falaha kriyaha. This verse says, where women are honored, gods are pleased, divinity blossoms there. And where women are dishonored, all actions, no matter how noble they may be, remain unfruitful. I purposely put this verse and found it very appropriate because yesterday we also celebrated Mother's Day. And this gives you a bit of an insight into the traditional Indian culture, that how much women were respected. And this is coming from Manusmriti, which is a very traditional book of law book, you can say. It has a lot of laws which people were using this book even in the courts earlier, and a lot of social customs. So it says, where women are honored, gods are pleased. And I know this verse since childhood. I always like that. Despite some media reports in today's India where you find that women are suppressed or going through some discriminatory treatment, this just gives you an idea that how they were treated earlier. And I have a hope that we would return, right, despite the present circumstances we would have. And even in today's India, we have in many sections people really honor, like the way when I grew up, generally there is a tradition to bow down to the elders. But we would not allow as men to have our feet touched by a woman, however younger she may be. Instead, we would be touching her feet on certain occasions. So only after I became a monk, actually, I ever allowed a woman to touch my feet. Otherwise, it was just from the childhood that idea was there that do not allow that. So I could not do that. Then another verse where yada and tada, when and then. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyati tarishyati. Verse 252 of Gita. Tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasa shrotasya cha. So I just wanted to highlight this aspect. When and then. You see in the translation, when and then. So there are relative clause sentences which are made by these indeclinable, and there is no case. So no matter what the sentence is, these two words are indeclinable, yatra and tatra. So whether it is feminine, masculine, no matter what the gender is, no matter what the number is, whatever the cases are, these words are indeclinables remain the same. Similarly, yada and tada. Only the case have to be remembered when we are using the relative pronouns. So this is for the relative clause. Then there were some questions on iti, how to use the word iti in Sanskrit. So if you look at here, iti, if you look at the dictionary, you will find more than half a page entry, and it has probably more than 20 scenarios, 20 different ways iti is used. If I go through all the scenarios, I think one class will not be enough just to cover iti. And after that, you would probably say, Swamiji, we have more questions than answers related to iti. So I just summarized here what is the primary meaning of iti. And for our purpose, it of course doesn't cover all the scenarios, but primarily just understand iti means thus or in this manner, or sometimes even because of. These are the words, these are the simple meaning of iti. So it can be used after a single word, after a list of words, after a complete sentence, or after a complete paragraph or a topic or a chapter. So that's how the iti is used. If you look at the single word, so here I have taken an example. Om from Bhagavad Gita 8:13. Om ityekaksharam brahma. Om iti. So you see iti, om iti. Here Lord is saying om. Thus, this om is one syllabled Brahman, one syllabled representation of God. So basically the idea is that om highlighting that part. So you can put in quotes in depending upon the English. So whenever you translate any sentence from Sanskrit to English, you choose that kind of English which makes the most sense in English, not necessarily going for the literal translation. So whatever makes the most sense in English to put that sentence, that's how you would actually make the English sentence. And iti generally used for the quotes. That's what the books you will find, that in the quotes like in English we use, but that is because that's how it makes more sense to put that together in English. It's not like one-to-one translation that you always put the quotes. Here you could put a single quote, for example, om, or he has put like between two commas. That is also acceptable. The idea is that I'm saying that this word om, this represents in this manner, it is one syllable representation of Lord. So understand that what does it mean, and that in English, whatever punctuation marks are required to convey the meaning, we can use them. A list of words, it can come after a list of words. So an example is Sattvam Rajas Tama iti. Sattva Raja Tama iti. So these are the three gunas born of nature. Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. So here the translator has put the hyphen, which makes perfect sense. Sattvas, Rajas and Tamas. These three gunas born of nature tie down the imperishable soul to the body. Could you put the quotes? Maybe in some cases quotes might have conveyed meaning, but here like the hyphen conveys the meaning just fine. Sattvas, Rajas, Tamas. So basically here we are saying there is this list, and these three gunas are, so the after iti, generally another sentence starts taking that as the reference. So sattva, so I have given a list and then saying that these three gunas born of nature. When it is after a sentence, like here in the verse 29, I'll just increase the size maybe. So here the word is na yotsya iti, verse 29. If you remember the sandhi rules, it was actually yotsye. That's why the another sandhi is not taking place. So it was yotsye, the first person singular verb form, yotsye, I will fight, and na means not, I will not fight. Now this is the complete sentence, na yotsye iti, I shall not fight. So having said this sentence to Lord Krishna, Arjuna became silent. So Arjuna said to him, I shall not fight, and became silent. So in this case, it makes sense whenever there is a sentence that you put in the quotes, because that becomes sort of a speech, indirect speech. Or direct speech would become in the quotes. If you could also make an indirect sentence in English. But the idea is that iti doesn't have to be always equated to the quotes. It's only because it makes more sense to say that way in English, particularly when it comes after the complete sentence. And when it comes after a paragraph or topic or chapter, then basically saying, so one of the ways it is used, if you take a topic, say for example a theorem, and you prove that theorem, and in the theorem at the end you can say iti siddham, that's thus it is proved. So you went through the whole theorem and just in the end you say iti siddham, that's how it is proved. It is very common to use at the end of the chapter. So iti also in that sense means end. So we use two words, atha and iti. So atha is start, and iti means end. So in Bhagavad Gita, if you remember, if we say atha prathamo dhyayah, means the start of the first chapter, and then at the end we say om tat sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So iti coming to the end. And many books you will find in Sanskrit very common, at the end of the chapter will put iti. So this is so much for iti. Then there was a question related to sandhi rule regarding chakara, and it says on Egenes book, page 151. So first, what is the rule here? So I'll just tell you the rule. Rule is, and we did not cover this particular sandhi rule in our classes because it is not so common. However, Egenes book covers it, and there are certain exercises. So I just want to present here. When chakara follows a short vowel, it becomes cha, like chakara and chakara together. One of the example is swachhaya, swachhaya. So chakara becomes preceded by chakara. It means one's own shadow. Swa means one's own, chaya means shadow. Swachhaya. Short vowel, you understand, these are akara, ikara, ukara, and rukara, not the long vowels. There are of many more rules as far as many more ways this rule applies, we are not covering those scenarios here. For our purpose, generally, it should be enough. And as I told you that this sandhi is not so common. Generally, if you remember, a vowel and then a consonant, vowel plus consonant, they do not undergo any sandhi. That's the general rule. But here there is, you can say, an exception. In Sanskrit, to say an exception is a little bit tricky because everything is rule based. It is just that different rules apply to different scenarios. So generally we said that whenever the vowel plus consonant combination is there, they would remain without any sandhi as separate words. But in this case, there is this particular scenarios where it becomes changed. There is a sandhi and the word becomes one. So we'll see this page 151 in Egenes' book also, just to make sure we cover our base. So here he has given this example. This is not given in IST in the book, just in Devanagari. Gajasya chayayam prajastishtanti. He has given us two separate words, but that is just for showing the sandhi working. But normally the way it's written, it will written as one word. And then he says here, notice that chakara becomes chakara after a short vowel. So he has given the rule here, and then he has referred to the page number 230 for more details. So if you go to page number 230, that's where he says, here is the rule for initial chakara. Initial chakara becomes chakara if the first word ends in a short vowel. Then he gives another scenario, which is not very common. Kutra chaya. It becomes kutra chaya. It becomes one word. I think he is just showing as a separate words because to tell you, to emphasize that rule, sandhi rule. But normally in the text, you will see as one word. So here person is saying, I'm puzzled about this word. I think he did not read this footnote, he or she. And but Egenes has explained it. We did not explain it in our class. And today I just wanted to explain that. Then another question. Somebody said, I have been reading Chandi, and in one mantra attached here, I noticed a double avagra. You see, this is double avagra. Pada krantah, pada krantastaya, tatah sopi pada krantah, taya nija mukhattatah. So we read about a single avagra, but not double avagra. So what is double avagra and where does it come? So I just wanted to give you a little bit idea. So single avagra we all studied. So for example, we had the words like K, P. So Tepi. This is the avagra mark. And the rule here is that when we did in our sandhi rules, that when ekara is followed by akara, short akara only, then ekara or okara in both the cases, then the short akara gets dropped and we place an avagra sign. Just to let you know that this avagra sign, this is kind of a punctuation mark in Sanskrit, and Panini grammar doesn't mention this mark at all, this avagra part at all. Panini grammar simply says that you could simply write Tepi without any mark like this. So it becomes difficult for people to know that there was a sandhi and what are the words. But that's how many people do write, and it was being written like that in many places. But for the ease of reading, it was started written like this, te, p. Now, similarly, we read our Dirgha Sandhi. So, Dirgha Sandhi was if akara, any akara plus akara would be akara, and whether it is short or long, it would be akara. So, if we go to our Sandhi, vowel Sandhi, so if you look at two similar vowels result into one long vowel, and when I put in the bracket, that means it could be short or long. So here akara could be short or long, and this akara could be short or long, and it becomes akara. The thing is that akara plus akara also becomes akara. And just like here we put an avagra to represent the loss of one akara, some people put two avagras to represent the loss of two akaras, because both are long and it has become in one long. Two short akaras are considered as one long akara. So they put two avagra marks to indicate the. So this is not so common, but in some text you will find that they will put the two avagra marks. So here the word was pada akrantaha. Pada akranta, both were long akara. So it is double avagra is put here to indicate that there was a two akaras are lost, so to speak. It's, as I said, this notation is not so common, but you do find it in text, and consider that as a dirgha sandhi when two akaras are there. Then there is another question. Also, can you please clarify the use of lot, imperative, and vidhiling potential tenses with some varying examples? I get confused. For example, when studying one verse of Bhagavad Gita on the website, which breaks down the grammar, vidhi is translated as you must know and is imperative. Is this correct? To me, in English, sounds more like potential. We call it modal verb in English. So this part I have to again emphasize that the Sanskrit and English are not equivalent languages. And there is always a risk when you try to use the English terms for representing the Sanskrit concepts. So any imperative and potential, these are the two clauses in Sanskrit, in English, which actually have their own meanings the way English is used. And lot and vidhiling, they have their own meanings the way Sanskrit is used. Just for the sake of closeness, we say lot is imperative and vidhiling is potential, but it is not completely true. You have to learn Sanskrit in a Sanskrit manner and English in an English manner. So try to use the Sanskrit terms, understand in the Sanskrit manner, and then this confusion will not arise. Same way we have the confusion regarding the case and preposition. So many people come with the question that why this case is being used, because that's how the Sanskrit way of using the case is. So we do take the help of translation, of course, as we are learning the language. But as far as the terminology is concerned, try to use more and more Sanskrit terminology rather than English terminology for Sanskrit concepts. So lot and vidhiling in Sanskrit, there are two lakaras, two moods, and there is a very good amount of overlap between these two. So that's why you see, you must know, this translation is done for lot lakara imperative, because there is a lot of overlap. Even though we say imperative and potential, just for the ease of people to understand, but there is a lot of overlap. Actually, Sanskrit grammar says that they can pretty much be used interchangeably. So this kind of questions I'm getting a lot, like related to why this case, why this translation. So this confusion is simply arising because we are trying to replace one word from Sanskrit or one concept from Sanskrit with the corresponding English concept, which while they are not completely equivalent. So it may give you a little bit help in the starting to understand the concept, but try to understand it in a Sanskrit way, and then these kind of confusions will not come. There is another question, page number 98. Jnanam pustakena bhavati. So this one, Jnanam pustakena bhavati. For those who don't know Devanagari, this is the sentence. Jnanam pustakena bhavati. If you see here, Jnanam pustakena bhavati, actually one person brought it to my notice, which is interesting because many of you have attempted these exercises, but you did not bring to my notice. Jnanam pustakena bhavati, it simply means, here if we go, it simply means that pustakena is the third person singular, that bhavati is the verb, jnanam is knowledge. So knowledge happens by books, means in other words, knowledge is attained by the books, by the help of the books. That's what it means. Pustakena is the instrumental singular, like Ramena. But the translation says knowledge is not in the books. That's what the translation says actually of this sentence. In Egenes, if you look at lesson 8, chapter 7, it actually has the translation that knowledge is not in the books. That's how the teacher tells the student. So this is a very interesting sentence in Sanskrit, and the way you can see how the poets can easily play with this. So I write this sentence here again. And if I basically put a space here, Jnanam pustake na bhavati. Now pustake is actually the seventh case singular. Na means not. Jnanam is knowledge. Knowledge is not in the books. So knowledge does not happen in the book. So the knowledge is not in the book. So almost completely opposite meanings actually. The same sentence just with the space. And this is the beauty of language. Many languages employ this. Many poets employ these kind of things in different languages. But Sanskrit just has tremendous variety which no other language can match. And you would be amazed actually that in manuscripts earlier, the word here, they were not necessarily giving the space between the words. So they were writing the whole thing as one block of the words. So both meanings could be interpreted by commentators, that pustakena bhavati or pustakena bhavati, quite opposite meanings. So just wanted to bring to you this part of Sanskrit, that you could just have one sentence meaning very different things. Actually, as far as Sanskrit is concerned, there are a lot of such combinations possible which are simply not possible in any other language. And I'll show you some examples later on, if time permits. I just wanted to go through some questions. Words ending in he or the. So some of the examples were people studied was like Shadhi. Sorry. Shadhi. Shadhi is a verb coming in Gita in verse 2:7, and we haven't studied this kind of ending. And this is very common in Sanskrit. So it's normally he, but sometimes it becomes dhi, depending upon the sandhi rules, some sandhi rules which we haven't studied, of course. If you look at our verb tables, and I go to the bhu and lava dhatu, both parasmaipadi and atmanepadi, particularly lot lakara, the imperative command or imperative mode. In parasmaipadi it becomes bhava, and in atmanepadi it becomes like labhaswa, like swa and a. So it's not in any of these endings actually, but it is a lot lakara. It is of the same. This is the same form for parasmaipadi. So just remember this, that this is for the parasmaipadi dhatu. We haven't studied that, but for many verbs, and it's very common ending, you will find shadhi, pahi. Pahi means please protect. So because it is lot lakara, second person singular, you are praying or you are requesting or you are giving an order to somebody, and in that sense it is used. So here shadhi means please discipline me. That's what Arjuna is saying. I am your disciple, please discipline me, shadhi. So this verb, whenever you see this ending, and you will find quite a few words, he or he, just consider them lot lakara, second person singular. In our higher label classes, we'll go more into the details of this, but there were some questions, so I just wanted to take this. Swami, I always have problem with the words like samavetaha, yoyotsavaha to identify as noun. So this question is coming from verse analysis we had. So we had these words, samavetaha, yoyotsavaha, and we identified as nominals. So they are not nouns actually, they are nominals. But in Sanskrit, the adjectives and nouns, they are treated in the very same way. Like for example, the same table of 8/3 that is used. So think of them as not as nouns. So depending upon the context, you will know whether they should be used as nouns or adjectives. But the good thing is that if it is any part of the if there is any word which is a part of the 8/3 table or 7/3 in case of pronouns, we call it nominal. And pronouns are relatively pronouns have their own limited set of words which are called pronouns. So you can actually identify a word as pronoun easily. But between the noun and adjective, that would be only on the context. So you put everything as nominal, figure out the case and number, and then you see the meaning, and depending upon the meaning, you see whether it is used as an adjective or it is used in the nominal. But the rule in Sanskrit for both nouns and adjectives, they follow the same table of 8/3. There is a question, page 168 and Egenes number 5. There were examples written in Devanagari, the word is joined, but in IAST there is a gap. Gacchati ashwam. So page 168. So this is the example person is talking about. Gacchati ashwam. So the sandhi, if you remember, gacchati plus ashwam, gacchati ashwam. Ikara becomes yakara. Ikara followed by akara becomes yakara. And it should become one word. He just highlighting that sandhi part. That's why he has given a separate words, but it should be one word. So follow our charts where I have specified whether the resulting word is one word or two words. Sometimes in book, because to highlight for the beginner students that there is a sandhi taking place, he has given a space in Egenes' book. Then page 152, lesson 11, exercise 2G. I translated as the king's daughter. The book has it as the king has a daughter. So let's see 152. So this is the word, Nrupasya Putrika. I'm just pronouncing it for those who can read Devanagari. Nrupasya Putrika. That means Nrupasya is the sixth case singular and Putrika is the first case singular. King's daughter. And that's what the person is saying here. I translated as king's daughter and book has king has a daughter. So if you consider that as an independent sentence, as the book has it, then independent sentence means it's a complete sentence. And complete sentence means the verb here is not specified but is implied. And verb is implied is asti. That means is, like in English is, asti. Nrupasya putrika asti, king has a daughter. If the same two words were appearing in another sentence where it is a part of the sentence, not the complete sentence, then your translation would be okay. King's daughter. There is a question. So we have covered certain questions. I'll take a break and we'll come back to that. There will be no exercise, but there is something I want you to attempt today. And that is related to teacher-student mantra. So you don't have to submit any solution to the email, and you probably won't be able to put together the whole thing because it is still in the beginning days. It is still a beginner's class. I just want you to attempt however much you can attempt, however much you can figure out. So we'll do the whole analysis of this teacher-student mantra. And just like we did for the first verse of Gita, if you remember, words in the and then type, nominal or verb, case, number, gender, base and meaning. And in case of verbs, tense, person, number, verb type, whether parasmaipadi or atmanipadi, root and meaning. I have given certain words here, word meanings for you to take some help to figure out. So av, as you see, avatu. So av means to protect. It's and third person singular present tense form is avati. So you have to figure out what is avatu. So look at your tables if you have already, and try to figure out. First you figure out the sandhi. So split the words, as we said, that is the first step, sandhi. We have already discussed the sandhi of this mantra, so you should be able to have some idea how the sandhi is taking place. And then next step is after sandhi, you figure out individual words. However much you can figure out. As I said, I'm not expecting you to do the whole thing. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a challenging exercise just to see how far can you go. So don't get disappointed if you are not able to make much of a progress. Regarding the verb forms, I just want to give you a clue that all the verb forms are lot lakara or imperative mood. All the verbs in this verse, they are from imperative mood, lot lakara. So that should give you a clue where to look for. Okay, so with this, and I have also specified the noun is neuter wherever you will try to see. This actually also is neuter. Let me put here. Adhitam also is neuter. Ma is a particle which means not. Vidush is a verb with the V as the prefix, verbal prefix. So this is the root. So try to see however much you can figure out. We have discussed all the concepts in the class. to figure out this verb, but probably not in a lot of detail. So this is 10 o'clock. We'll have a break for 10 minutes. You don't have to send any solutions to the email, just for your own purpose. And after the class, after the break, we would actually go through the solution of this. Okay, so there is a break now for 10 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. So we'll go through this, and I will not explain each and every aspect of it in too much detail, but I wanted to just give you an idea that how to attempt it. So you have already seen how do we do this verse analysis, and this verse particularly, it's coming from Veda, very popular verse, Om Sahana Vavatu. And there were quite a few requests to explain the meaning in more detail. And so here I have already put these words. So this is basically after the split of the Sandhi. I have also put the type. So now, if you remember, it's a pronoun, and it's an accusative dual of asmad. Asmad means I. So if it's a dual, and if it's accusative, it means to both of us. Avatu, it's a verb form. It's a lot lakara, imperative. And if you remember from our verb tables, bhavatu, avatu, so it's a lot lakara, third person singular. So third person singular. And verb is just a parasmaipadi. So I'll just copy parasmaipadi from here. And root here I already gave in the class notes. It's av. Av means to protect. So avatu means, because it's a lot lakara. So once you know this information, avatu means because it's a third person singular, it becomes may he protect. That's what this word would mean. May he protect. So with a verb, the sentence becomes complete. And here it is actually indeed become complete. Saha now avatu. Now means both of us, because it's a, if you remember from the pronoun table, asmad and yusmad. Now, here, this word, it's a short form of, so second case, dual of asmad. So it's a accusative dual of asmad, means both of us. So how will you translate if you were to translate just this sentence? Saha now avatu. It's very simple. So avatu means may he protect. So may he, and here he is referred to God because there is no subject here. May he protect both of us. Now, both of us together. And Similarly, Saha now bhunaktu. Now these two are same words. Saha now, here also accusative dual. Bhunaktu. It is also lot lakara like avatu, bhunaktu, and only the verb here is different. So verb I gave you as bhuj, and it means to nourish, to take care of, to enjoy. So the same way, saha now bhunaktu. How will you translate? Same way. It's also a verb. Sentence is complete here. Saha now bhunaktu. May he nourish both of us together. So may he, again refers to God, nourish both of us together. So one thing, if you look at here, once you understand this grammatical analysis, the way you arrive the meaning from the Sanskrit words with the understanding of the underlying grammar, somehow your understanding becomes so much better and deeper instead of simply reading an English translation of the words. And this part to me has been extremely beneficial. I have found that I understand the words much better if I understand the grammatical structure, underlying grammatical structure of Sanskrit, instead of simply reading. So many places, sometimes the translation also, depending upon different persons, they translate slightly differently. And if you just reading the translation, somehow you just don't get the same thing. Another thing which you can see here, to nourish, there is also the meaning to take care of. So we can say he may take care of us together. Or to enjoy, may he enjoy us together. What does it mean? May he enjoy us together. May God be pleased with us. That's what the enjoyment means. In Sanskrit, this word enjoying is also, for example, if you like a friend, you enjoy his company, like this. So how does God enjoy us? In Bhagavad Gita, this is just for your study and reference. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, Lord has given many qualities that I like the devotees with these qualities. So if we develop those qualities in us, that's how God enjoys us. So now this becomes a very deep meaning here. Instead of simply nourishing, which is a more of a physical phenomena, it also, the same words also can mean that it actually makes us that we should develop those qualities that may God enjoy actually both of us together. And if you go a little bit deeper into Sanskrit studies, you will see that many commentators, when they write the commentaries, and many of them write in Sanskrit, they actually take all these things into account, the underlying grammatical structure, the different meanings of the root, and then how the different meanings of the same words comes out. So I just wanted to give an idea. I'll cover this whole thing and we'll post it into the repository so that you can take a look at it, and you can understand that how it is actually coming. We don't have so much time, so I just wanted to take the questions, but that list would be available. This question number 11, I had one question, Swamiji. In any mantra at the end it is said Shanti, 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 Om Shanti, 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 like this, stressing on the third Shanti with a longer Tihi. Why is this last Shanti pronounced as Shanti with a longer last letter? So in Vedic Sanskrit, these Shanti mantras, they are coming from Vedic literature. They are from Vedas. In Vedic Sanskrit, there are accents. So in this case, because of the accent, the pronunciation is changed, becomes a little longer. In classical Sanskrit, which is the Sanskrit most of us study, and Bhagavad Gita, for example, is in this classical Sanskrit where it doesn't have accents, it doesn't apply. But because these mantras are from Vedic literature, that's why we have this Shanti pronounced as a little longer. There are accents. Could you please post a complete list of all the verbs we have studied so far, their stem and the meaning in English? Thanks for the lessons and your divine work. So I have posted the verb conjugation tables. This one, all the, so bhu and lava dhatu, gam and pat dhatu, then kath dhatu in both the parasmaipadi and atmanipadi, as dhatu, which is one of the common ones, and kru dhatu, which is a very common dhatu, even though we have not covered in detail, but I have put the forms here in both parasmaipadi and atmanipadi so that you can refer to these forms whenever in the literature and see that which tense, which case, which number it belongs to. We'll discuss more of these things in our higher level classes. Also, there is actually this chart prepared by Ben Baba here, and I'll post this also into the repository. So this is a very beautifully done in a format. It has taken the vocabulary from Egenes' book and put together in a cheat sheet kind of form, which you can print and keep it with you. And this is 4 pages. So if you do back and forth, you can actually print it in 2 pages. So it covers pretty much all the vocabulary which you find in Egenes' book. So very useful utility, thanks to Ben Baba. And I'll put this thing into the repository so that you can download and print it for your reference. Page 49 in Egenes' book, 2 sentences being considered. These are from Thomas' book, chapter 5, exercise 5. Hero speaks to the boy. So it can be accusative or dative. How do we know it is accusative? So, and then in English, the same sentence can also be written as hero speaks with the boy. And in that sense, it can be instrumental. How do we know it is accusative? So these things, first of all, you cannot literally translate, as I told you, from English to Sanskrit or Sanskrit to English. You have to see what makes sense in that particular language. In Sanskrit, for example, the word speaking is associated with the accusative case. That's why it will be accusative. So even in English, you might say that he speaks with the boy. But in Sanskrit, this verb, speak, takes the accusative case. So more you get exposed to Sanskrit and more you try to think from a Sanskrit perspective, like terminology and other things, instead of just literally translating, then you will slowly get an understanding that whether it should be accusative case or not. Similar kind of question is here related to bhudhatu. Suryah na chandraha bhavati iti acharyah shishyam vadati. Is this a special case for bhudhatu? So you see, both are actually nominative. Suryah and chandraha. Suryah na chandraha bhavati. Both, they are not, Chandra is not in the accusative. Like sun does not become the moon. That's what it means. Suryaha na Chandra bhavati. Sun does not become the moon. Normally you think that it might be an accusative case. But bhudhatu actually does not take accusative case. It takes nominative only. That's why you see sun does not become the moon. It becomes Suryahana Chandra Bhavati. And here the word order becomes important because if you say Chandrahana Surya Bhavati, it becomes moon does not become the sun. So in some cases, you will find that word order can change the meaning. What would have been the translation for something other than Bhudhatu? Something like the sun is shining, not the moon. These are actually two different sentences. If you look at, the sun is shining, moon is not shining. That's what it means. It's not like an object. It's not a subject object kind of sentence. So they are two different sentences actually. But if the sentence were sun is making the moon shine, then you would have the accusative case. So Suryaha Chandram Bhasayate, sun is making the moon shine. So if then it becomes an object and you will have an accusative case. There was a question. We covered a root called vas, and we said that vas means we covered it as parasmaipadi dhatu, and we said that the meaning of the verb is to dwell, to reside somewhere. So saha gruhe vasati, he resides at home, he dwells at home. But his person is saying that when I look at the dhatu rupa shabda kosha, dhatu kosha, it is listed as atmanepadi, and he has given this screenshot from, can you clarify? So this is in Devanagari. So let us look at the dictionary, and I want to explain to you one important concept in. So vas, we'll see the vas. And let me just increase the size a little bit so that you can see more clearly. So vas. Now this is the root word here. And here it actually gives the class numbers. So we discussed very briefly, we'll discuss more of this concept in the higher level classes, that all the roots are classified in 10 classes. And there is a reason why they are classified so. The same root can appear in multiple classes. So vas appears in class 1, nivase, nivase means to dwell, and it also appears in class 2, means achhadane. Achhadane means to cover. From this root, the word vastra comes. Vastra means cloth. From this root, nivasa comes, means a dwelling place. So this is not uncommon in Sanskrit to have the same root appearing in multiple classes with different meanings and with different conjugations. Why this happens, what is the use of it, why Panini chose this kind of a structure, that we'll see more in the higher level classes. But just understand that a root can appear in two different classes, and it can be parasmaipadi or atmanepadi depending upon the meaning and depending upon the class. Okay, so that's not uncommon. You will find many examples like that. So this is one such example, that root was nivas, in nivase it is atmane, in achhadane it is class 2, it's atmanepadi. This is not what we covered. We covered this one, was vasati nivase. Okay. Then another question. For the declension of noun girl, and some of the forms are the same for noun boy. For example, nominative plural for both are same. So the person here is saying basically, there are two words in Sanskrit. So Bala is the boy, and Bala is girl. These are the two different words in Sanskrit. Now, if you take the nominative plural, this is an akaranta masculine. The nominative plural, if you remember, it becomes balaha. and here nominative plural also becomes balaha. So these are, sorry, nominative plural in both bala and bala both becomes balaha. So if you say balaha gacchanti, you will not know whether it is referring to boys are going or girls are going. So generally based upon the context you will know, and sometimes, as I said, poets play with this kind of flexibility that they will put. So generally based upon, so there could be some scenarios where the words could be used like this, and they would be, you would know from the context. Okay, so I received a lot of comments from you appreciating the course, expressing your thanks and gratitude, and I could not respond to them individually. I really want to express my thank you, sincere thanks. It has been a busy experience for me, but a joyful, mainly because of your enthusiasm and commitment. And some of the concerns which I received were related to Devanagari. So first thing I want to tell you that please do not have any resistance, because I somehow perceive that there is a resistance in learning Devanagari. Think of it. If you were to learn Japanese language and you say, I don't want to learn Japanese script, how well that effort would be taken. Any language, if you learn and say, I don't want to learn it in the script of the language, how well it will be taken. So Sanskrit is a phonetic language, and because of that, it offers this flexibility that you can have multiple scripts. Yet the default script which you will find in most of the places in Devanagari. So if you want to pursue this is a little bit seriously, please do learn Devanagari. Do not have the resistance for that, for learning Devanagari. I have already listed a few sites, and they are, you can try to take the help of that. I'll also propose one thing here, and that is related to the volunteers in Devanagari. So in our group, if any one of you who know Devanagari well and you have the time and willingness to help others, you can just volunteer. So right now I have opened the chat message that everybody can chat everybody. If you're comfortable, you can just post your email address or phone number, whatever you are comfortable with, on this chat publicly. Those who need the help in Devanagari, they can probably contact you and you can help them. So I have already, so if you are comfortable, please feel free to do that. Right now the chat window is open publicly for everybody. Then also there are a lot of videos. One thing I wanted to tell you, that Devanagari is used both in Hindi and Sanskrit, and you will find a lot of sites and videos which actually teach Hindi, and therefore they will also teach Devanagari. The problem with that is that Hindi has slight different pronunciation. So just be aware of that. Even though it is the same script, but slightly, very slightly different. In some places there is a slight difference. So try to see if you can go to a site which teaches the alphabet as a part of the Sanskrit rather than as a part of Hindi. But even if you go by Hindi, you will be able to manage most of it. Just a very slight difference is somewhere. Okay, I just wanted to share one or two comments. I know it has been a little bit over class, but today we can probably afford to go a little bit over. Just wanted to share. I received a lot of comments. I just, so you can actually read some of it. And person here is saying, although classes were very hard for me as I am from Croatia and my English is not so great, especially from grammar point of view, repeating tables 8x3 and 3x3 was like meditation for me. I'm so grateful for that. Homework was like a game. It was hard and challenging, but in the same time very fulfilling, and I was very happy doing it. I really like this because it's very touching that how positively you are taking, despite the situation, that even the English is not being, many of the participants on this call, for them English is not their first language. Even for me, actually, it's not a first language. But I have lived here in USA to have a fair understanding of this language. Many of you do not have such a background in English, and it becomes doubly challenging to learn Sanskrit through English. And even then, I really like this very positive attitude. Then one person wrote, the rhythm of the prayers bubbles me through the day. Learning this spiritual language from these higher ages is energizing and has been a blessing with all of the COVID-19 disruption. So COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, it has, of course, caused a lot of pain. But as we say that there is no absolute good or absolute bad, it has also given certain opportunities. For example, this Sanskrit class with so many participants could not have happened if it just gave us the opportunity to have so many people being at home and have this class. So this was a beautiful sentiment. Another person, which is a nice thing here, and I want to just increase a little bit so that you can read it. So this person went to Guruji's class of this brahmachari training. This year we had brahmachari training, and Guruji personally took some Sanskrit classes. I wasn't there, but I heard that many people really liked it. Of course, if Guruji is teaching, it becomes a different experience altogether. And Guruji made some quotations about Sanskrit, which someone actually put together in a nice poster form. So you can just read it. And Guruji, of course, has combined the Sanskrit with our meditation practice and aspects of meditation. And he says here, Sanskrit is a language of practice. So do practice it. Otherwise, it will just go away. If you do not practice it, you will forget. It's very natural. And the first sentence, he says, if you want to learn and always have the attitude to learn, you will remain young. And that is so true in this class, because we have so many participants. Even though in physical age they may be in 70s, but in their learning enthusiasm, they are really young to pick up this kind of language. So I just thought that there are some comments here. We don't have time but to go through, but I really like them because they show you that how much people are putting their efforts, how much, despite the difficulties, they are doing their bit to learn this thing, just for the sake of knowledge. So one person actually wrote, I had worked in the past with Egenes' book alone, but now at some points the knot where I was stuck before has opened. That is really good. So that is a very good way to actually study, that you study the chapter first, and when the teacher is taking the class, you can ask a very relevant questions, and many of the questions will just get answered. So with this, we'll come to a conclusion, and please post. Some of you have posted your email address, which is good. So those who are having difficulties, please contact these volunteers. Thank you for volunteering. And I hope that when we announce the level 2 class, which would be sometime in June, we haven't decided on the date yet. Some people have also helped me in preparing the text for the level 2 class, the scripture class. So I want to thank for that. And with this, I hope today's class, you can still keep on sending your questions and exercise solutions to the email address, and I will respond as much. Now the time is a little bit more, so I can still respond to the questions. So even though we are having this question and answer class, which we will not be keep having, but you can still keep sending your questions. And when the level 2 course is announced, an email will go out. For scripture class, it will go out to everybody. For level 2 grammar class, it will go out to the Sanskrit participants only. And then that there will be a formal registration process. So right now, I just wanted to understand your preference of the days. Based upon that, we'll decide on a day that when to conduct these level 2 classes. And there would be a formal registration process going out before, maybe 1 or 2 weeks before the class starts. So with that, I want to conclude. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everyone.